Welcome to the Catastrophic Comeback Podcast with American injury lawyer Clark Speaks, helping you find hope, purpose, and joy after a catastrophic injury.
Welcome back to Catastrophic Comeback. I'm continuing my conversation with Jeff Watson, managing partner at Speaks Law Firm. Jeff, I want to talk to you about the role of focus groups in this process. We've been talking about case value. My opinion is that focus groups are not for the purposes of assessing value. They can help with some stuff, but the purpose of focus groups, in my opinion, is to see how juries are going to react to crucial issues in the case. The idea of liability, the idea of contributory negligence, the idea of gross negligence, those kinds of things. If there's a specific fact about a defendant, if there's a specific fact about a plaintiff that, make that person, for example, if a person who caused the accident was drunk at the time, how is a jury going to react to that type of information? What's your impression of focus groups? Are they helpful? Are they not helpful? How are they best used?
Well, you don't want to use them on every case because there's an expense to them, obviously. If it's a case that doesn't have a huge value, you'd be costing the client a lot of money for something that you should be able to figure out on your own. But when it's one of these catastrophic cases and you're trying to, all the details, right? The devil's in the details. We've all heard that phrase before. Some of these details can sway the case this side, and the other detail may sway it way back over here. So we're trying to figure out what's the jury going to react to, what matters to them. Like, we'll get a group of people that are in the county where we're going to try the case. That's important, because if you just get a group of people from all over the place, you might have somebody from California that thinks the case is worth $20 million, because it is worth $20 million out there. But in South Carolina, it's worth $1 million, because they're just more conservative, folks there. So, we try to get jurors or these sort of mock, focus group folks, just everyday people, and a different collection of them, different folks, men, women, different races and backgrounds. And, we try to get a smattering so we can kind of see how everybody reacts from their different perspectives. We'll have one lawyer play, a defense lawyer, one play a plaintiff's lawyer for the injured person. And we won't tell them we're from the same firm. And, they'll actually sort of mini try the case in front of this focus group and see how they react.
So usually you and I, just to educate our audience, you and I are not actually playing a role of either a plaintiff's lawyer or defendant's lawyer. We're sort of sitting back, taking notes, watching how these mock jurors, this focus group, is reacting to these different pieces of information. And then we're able to ask questions at the end to elicit their opinions about these issues. My impression of those focus groups is that they, and I'm thinking of a couple of examples here recently, where the defense was just banging on the table about this guy contributory negligence, and this is and we even had some division in our own office about opinions about, hey, how big a problem was contributory negligence for us. But this focus group helped us really understand that issue and how the jury might ultimately resolve that issue. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, the jury, some of the jury found contributory negligence, but what they ultimately, and most of them did not, what they ultimately found was, or we ultimately saw was, it wasn't really a big issue for these people. Even the ones that found contributory negligence weren't going to deny our client the money that they were after, and the verdicts that they came back with were significantly higher than we thought. And it also, they also found gross negligence, which was an issue in our own office where there had been some division. Well, we shouldn't add gross negligence. Maybe we should add, we decided to add it. That was primarily you and I that wanted to add that in there. And it made a difference. Like, the jury found gross negligence on behalf of this. So I was able to call the other lawyer up and say, we just did the focus group on this, and here's what they found. They found gross negligence. punitive damages, contrib, they just blew right over that. Like, if we try this case, this is what's going to happen. You guys are going to get hit with a big verdict. And it mattered. He knew. I've known him for a long time, several decades, and he knew if I was telling him this, it was accurate information, and it mattered, And some of the things that we did on that case, he actually came back to me and said, these things that you did, this focus group, this adding punitive damages, this expert, these things that you did probably added $1 million worth of value on this case. He told me that. The defense lawyer told me that.
So we're coming back to character, which I think is important in all of this, and that is, there's a couple of places where character matters in this case. Do you, when you ultimately make a decision to to do a focus group, you have to have the character to be responsible with your client's resources. Is that a good use of money or is that not? Because ultimately that's going to be expense to the case. The other thing is when you say to another lawyer, "Hey, this is what our focus group told us," and then that lawyer accepts that, that's an indication of a reputation that's built over many, many decades of, if I say something, it's the truth,
right?
And I will say also with respect to the lawyers, I'm trying to think if there's an exception to this, but I don't think that there is, that do these high-end cases, these very complex, very difficult injury cases, these cases that are catastrophic injuries, life-changing injuries, multi-million-dollar cases. The character is strong on the other side too. I mean, we don't do the same work, but the people that do those kinds of things, and I can think of probably 25 lawyers in North Carolina that defend these kinds of cases, really, it's the same 5 that we see over and over again. But still, I feel the same. I feel the same way about those guys. If they tell me something, it's the truth.
They're high character as well, and they're good at what they do. And there's so many nuances to these focus groups. Like, I was thinking back to a recent case that we did, and there were some phrases that our lawyers used when they were doing their opening statement or their closing statement, and I remember the jurors talking about, and like those phrases kept coming up. And so sometimes it was bad. Like that phrase, like we were like taking notes, like don't use this phrase. Yeah. Other times it was good. Like they really latched onto that. Like that needs to be front and center of what we're saying. And then it was also different results. Like we were able to, look at it and say, okay, all the white females sort of went this way with it. All the African-American males sort of went this way with it. All the older folks went this way. All the younger folks went, and so you can sort of see, now you're starting to see, okay, well, here's what I want in my jury. Like, I don't want this in my jury because that could be a problem for my client, And so you're able to, there's all these little nuances we can determine in those focus groups. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So you can't make jury selections based on race, but your point is well taken. And so I remember early in my career, I remember going to a trial skills, like a continuing education kind of workshop thing. It was like a week-long thing at Duke, and I remember going through this, and when we put on our trials or whatever, and then we were able to sit back in another room and watch them deliberate, and I saw that exact scenario play out, and that's the first place I'd seen this, where the young person saw the whole case through the eyes of the young witness. The old person saw the whole case through the eyes of the old witness. The male saw the case through, the middle-aged male saw the case through the eyes, you know what I mean? And everybody sort of picked the person who looked like them the most, and sort of that was their starting place for the case. And I thought that was absolutely fascinating. And I think we see a lot of that same thing play out in these focus groups when we use them. And that helps us be able to assess how these things are going to play out in front of a diverse jury when we get to court, which in turn helps us give good quality, comprehensive information to plaintiffs who then might make the best decision for themselves and for their family. So I find these focus groups to be unbelievably valuable. And if the financial criteria is there, so it makes sense for the client, then I think they're absolutely critical to the whole process. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you talking to me about that, and we'll continue with another topic next.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.